I can hear the hull groaning around me, a low, almost human moan, reverberating through the lightless corridors of this cursed space. Every so often, weak lights flicker when they work at all, casting leaping shadows that toy with my mind. In the darkness between those frail sparks, I imagine the void itself pressing in, thick with unseen eyes. Emperor, preserve me. I've started whispering to myself just to fill the silence. My voice is a raspy echo in my helmet, the only sound besides the distant clank of shifting metal and the steady thud of my heart. Am I the only one left? The question circles my mind like a predator as I tighten my grip on my bolt pistol. Its weight is familiar, solid, a reminder of duty in a place that seems to reject all that is sane and holy. It's hard to tell how much time has passed since I was truly not alone. Hours, days, time bleeds strangely here. My chronometer is useless. Its display spins in lazy circles, as if mocking the idea of measuring reality in this warped graveyard of ships. Fate versus free will, that ancient philosophical debate surfaces unbidden in my thoughts. Once I would have confidently asserted my will could carve through destiny like a power sword through flesh. I was an inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, a sworn hunter of the damned, armed with the Emperor's light and an unbreakable conviction. Now here I am, adrift in shadows and doubt, wondering if I ever had any control at all, or if every step that led me here was choreographed by some cruel, unseen hand. Perhaps by the changer of ways himself, the very demon I sought to outwit. A dry, humorless chuckle escapes my lips at the irony. I, who prided myself on unyielding faith and reason, now choke on questions I'd normally dismiss as heresy or fatalism. But isolation on this floating tomb breeds introspection as much as terror. When you can't trust your senses, you start to question even your own soul. The walls seem to breathe around me. I feel vibrations as if the Hulk had a heartbeat. Sometimes I catch myself believing it's alive. The Space Hulk itself, hungry and aware, playing with me like a cat with prey. That thought would have seemed absurd once. Now, I save my incredulity for the next impossible thing, because impossibilities have become my reality here. I'm still clad in the remnants of my carapace armor, but it feels like a funeral shroud. The inquisitorial rosette at my collar, once a badge of absolute authority, now feels like a lead weight, dragging me deeper into damnation. I rub a thumb over its etched wool sigil in the gloom, recalling how sure I was of my purpose when I first stepped aboard this derelict. The rosette identified me as judge, jury, executioner, an instrument of the Emperor's will. Out here, cut off from reinforcement or counsel with the warp's breath on my neck, that symbol feels more like a target. Perhaps it always was. Perhaps from the moment I declared myself an enemy of chaos, I marked myself for special attention from the dark gods. Cinch. I have no doubt now that it is his hand coiling through the madness on this wreck. The signs were there from the beginning. The strange sigils we found scorched into bulkheads. The distortions in reality, like silent laughter at the corner of your eye. At first, I assumed it was just residual warp stain, the kind that lingers in any wreck that drifts too long through the immaterium. But this was something deliberate, something intelligent. Every step deeper I took, I felt a presence, as if threads of fate were tightening around me, rearranging the labyrinth of metal corridors according to some grand design. And like a fool, I pressed on, convinced I was the one hunting the prey, not realizing how neatly the trap was laid. I slide down to sit with my back against a cold wall panel just for a moment. The metal is damp with condensation or blood, I can't tell. And frankly, it hardly matters. Exhaustion tugs at my eyelids, but I dare not fully sleep. That's when the nightmares slip in. When my guard is lowest. Or perhaps they aren't nightmares at all, but the whispers of the demon gaining purchase inch by inch in my mind. Isolation amplifies the whispers until even your own inner voice is suspect. I must hold on to who I am. I am Inquisitor. I remind myself, my name feels distant on my tongue, like it belongs to someone else, of His Imperial Majesty's Holy Inquisition. I repeat this silently, like a mantra. It's one of the few things I know to be true, or I need it to be true, because if I lose that, I'm lost entirely. My sense of identity feels fragile here. The longer I remain on this hulk, the more reality frays at the edges. Is it the demon's doing, or simply my mind fracturing under strain? I used to think willpower was my superpower, that an Inquisitor's greatest weapon is the strength of her mind, her ability to resist temptation and terror alike. I recited prayers of fortitude, bound my soul to the Emperor's justice. Yet piece by piece I feel those mental fortifications peeling away. Doubt creeping in like rot under a door. In the deafening silence, old memories I'd locked away pry themselves loose. Regrets, fears, tiny nagging thoughts I would normally purge with a litany or a bolt shell, now free to whisper seductively in the voice of my own conscience. Am I doing the right thing? The question isn't academic anymore. It's visceral. Every corridor I choose to walk, every door I dare to open might seal my fate or someone else's. If fate is even something that can be sealed, Cinch would laugh at the idea that fate is so easily managed. The thought angers me. My jaw clenches. I decide my path, not some trickster god. I am still the master of my soul. I have to believe that. Even as evidence mounts to the contrary, even as my supposed free will feels more and more like a cruel joke. A distant clatter jolts me from my thoughts, metal on metal, echoing from somewhere in the maze ahead. In an instant my bolt pistol is up, safety off, trained on the darkness down the corridor before I even draw breath. The red targeting glow of my sight skims over rusted beams and hanging cables that sway gently as the hulk shifts. Nothing. Maybe a piece of debris finally gave way. Or maybe something wants me to know I'm not alone after all. I rise slowly, knees protesting after crouching in anxiety for throne knows how long. Show yourself, I mutter under my breath. A half-hearted bravado. The words die in the stale air, going nowhere. Of course there's no answer. Just the continued low creaks of the ship. If it was something alive, it knows exactly where I am now. So be it. Subtlety left this game hours ago. I refuse to cower. Not yet. Anyway, I have to move. Lingering too long invites disaster. Either my own thoughts will consume me, or something else will. As I push forward, forcing one lean foot in front of the other, I realize I'm still carrying one of our Vox units clipped to my belt. The portable short-range communicator we brought. Its transmitter light is long dead. Out of habit, I lift it and try once more to hail anyone out there. I know it's futile, even before I speak. But hearing a human voice, even my own, crackle over a Vox would be a comfort. This is Inquisitor, calling any Imperial vessel or personnel. Respond, please. My voice sounds worn and small through the Vox grill of my helmet. Static. I adjust the frequency, cycling through channels mechanically. A hiss and crackle are my only reply. On one channel, for the briefest moment, I think I catch a whisper my name, drifting out of the noise. My breath catches, and I hold it, straining to listen. Nothing now, just my mind playing tricks. Or else something on the other end deciding to toy with me. I shake the Vox and clip it back to my belt. If help is coming, it'll find me eventually. Or I'll finish this mission alone. Those are the only outcomes I allow myself to consider. A third outcome, that I become yet another lost soul on this ghost ship, I refuse to entertain. Focus, one foot in front of the other. That's how we've made it this far, isn't it? Step by step, there's a destination here, a nexus deep in the hulk where all this corruption originates. I'm sure of it. I can almost feel a gentle tug in my skull, as if an invisible hook has sunk behind my eyes, drawing me forward like a puppet on a string. Trust your instincts, they taught me. But what if my instincts are compromised? What if the path I choose is exactly the path laid out for me? Damn it. No, I won't give that thought power. If I'm marching into a trap, so be it. Better that sitting here slowly going insane. Insane. The word lingers like a bad taste. In moments like this, I wonder, would I even know if I was slipping into madness? There's no one left to ground me. No second set of eyes to confirm what's real. I touch a small signet ring on my left hand. An old habit. It was my father's ring. One of the few relics of my life before the Inquisition that I still carry. The metal's cool surface is reassuringly real against my glove. I concentrate on the engraved family crest, recalling its details from memory and childhood. The swooping aquila, and the motto of a proud lineage of imperial servants. It reminds me I had a life outside this nightmare, that I am someone beyond an inquisitor on a doomed mission. I am still human, at least I hope I am. Breathing a little steadier, I shoulder my weapon and press onward down the corridor, leaving the spot where I'd allowed myself a few minutes of weakness. Ahead, the passage splits into an intersection where the ship's architecture changes noticeably. Evidence of another vessel fused into this conglomerate hulk. The walls to the left bear faded administratum seals and stenkled high Gothic script, identifying deck designations, likely a section of some ancient pilgrim transport. To the right, the corridor transitions into brutalist plastile plating, unmarked, except for hazard stripes. A fragment of a navy vessel, perhaps. The junction itself is a jagged wound of metal where the two ships met, as if some angry god smashed them together out of spite. Perhaps Tinch found even the destinies of ships amusing to tangle. I pause at the threshold of that junction, every sense alert. The air here prickles cold and my breath fogs inside my helmet. I remember standing here the first time when we had a full team and a clear objective. Throne. That feels like a lifetime ago. Though it's been what? Days at most. We were so confident then, so united in purpose. A knot of grief forms in my throat as unwanted memories flood back. I wasn't always alone on this hulk. I owe it to them, my companions, to remember what happened, to keep going. They followed me into this nightmare, trusting my leadership, and one by one I blink away the sting in my eyes. No time for mourning. Not yet. Later, if there's a later for me, I'll mourn them properly. For now, I use the pain as fuel. The Emperor tests us in unimaginable ways. Perhaps this is my test. Or perhaps it's not the Emperor at all, but an elaborate torture by the ruinous powers. Either way, I have a job to do. I muster a faint smirk at a grim thought. If this is the Emperor's test, he really outdid himself this time. Sometimes a bit of dark sarcasm is the only defense against despair. Gathering what remains of my resolve,
I step across the threshold into the junction, leaving behind that brief refuge of self-pity. In the silence, I imagine I can still hear echoes of my team's voices, as if their shades linger here. I clutch my bolter tighter and press forward. This isn't over. Not for me. Not yet. And as long as I'm still breathing, I'll see this mission through, free will or fate be damned. I remember how it all began. Back when I wasn't alone. Back when I still had allies at my side and optimism. Or was it arrogance driving me forward? It feels like a lifetime ago. But in truth, only days have passed since we first boarded this forsaken amalgamation of wreckage and ruin. We came in the usual way. A breaching pod from our inquisitorial cutter which latched onto a torn open docking port on the hulk's periphery. The entry was textbook, our preparation exhaustive. As the pod's melter charges blasted through layers of ancient hull and the hatch door hissed open, I led the descent into darkness, my team fanning out behind me with practiced discipline and whispered litanies. There were 5 of us at the outset. Myself at
Point, interrogator LRA. My proteseer, fiercely intelligent and loyal to a fault, sweeping our flanks with her auspex scanner, pinging softly in the gloom. Attackers, a grizzled veteran from the Imperial Guard, seconded to my retinue for fire support, his las rifle at the ready, and a heavy pack of demolition charges strapped to his back. Margos de Marlo, a tech priest of Mars, assigned to interface with the Hulk systems and recover any sacred tech, his mechandrites coiling and twitching around his robed form like impatient serpents, and Sena, our sanctioned psyker, pale and slight, the golden Aquila talisman at her neck, marking her as soul-bound to the Emperor. 5 souls stepping into the abyss, confident that together we could face whatever lay in the bowels of this derelict. The initial chambers were eerily still, our boots scraped through decades, perhaps centuries of dust and debris. The beam of my flashlight lance cut across bulkheads marred with corrosion and strange fungal growths. It was like stepping into a tomb that hadn't been disturbed in ages. In the hush, the only sounds were our breathing and the faint electric whine of De Marlo's servo skull drone hovering at our shoulders. No immediate contacts. Inquisitor, LRA reported, her voice tight with anticipation over the vox. She was young, eager, perhaps too eager to prove herself. Her apex pinged quietly, searching for heat signatures or motion. I glanced back at her. Through her visor, I imagined the spark of excitement in her eyes. The corner of my mouth twitched in a reassuring smile. She probably couldn't see. Emperor, bless her. Lyra had an enthusiasm that even this gloom couldn't snuff. At least not then. Adakis muttered a curse about the stench. At the time, I barely noticed it. Adrenaline and focus high, but he was right. There was a particular odor clinging to the place. Old death and ozone, rust and something sour beneath it all. A metallic taste settled at the back of the throat with each breath, the residue of warp exposure that set one's teeth on edge. Severina certainly felt it. She paused on the threshold as we advanced, one slender hand touching the tarnished Aquila pendant on her chest, and whispered a protective catechism. I didn't rush her. A few seconds to gird her soul with prayer was prudent. We all knew that stepping onto a space hulk often meant stepping through thin veils of reality, where the warp's influence pulled, weapons up and safeties off. We advanced slowly into a vast shadow-cloaked compartment. It appeared to be a cargo hold from one of the conjoined ships, a cavernous space with stacked crates and hanging chains that disappeared into darkness above. Part of the hold's far wall was cracked open to vacuum.
We could see nothing but star-speckled blackness beyond that ragged aperture. Our suit-mag boots kept us grounded in the thin atmosphere. The scene inside was one of still devastation. Shipping containers lay strewn. Some burst open, spilling long-rotted foodstuffs and personal effects of pilgrims long dead. A servitor long inactive hung entangled in sparking wires from a collapsed gantry, its flesh parts mummified, its bionic arms frozen in their last task. The eerie tableau of lifeless industry gave me pause. I signaled a halt to survey our surroundings. Strange how that moment stands out in memory with crystalline clarity. The dust moles dancing in our helmet lights. The almost sacred hush as we took stock. In hindsight, perhaps we should have heeded the unspoken warning. Tombs are meant to be left alone. Our silence was broken by LRA's voice, hushed but excited. Look here. She moved toward a fallen crate, sweeping dust aside to reveal a painted aquila on its side, and high Gothic lettering. Pilgrim effects. Shrine of St. Cardine. This must be from the missionary vessel that disappeared near Galathine, she murmured, her scholar's mind already connecting dots. Indeed, I recalled that one of the many myths around this hulk's origin was that it contained a lost shrine ship. If true, it could mean consecrated ground amid the corruption a double-edged sword. Sometimes, holy relics repel the warp. Sometimes they attract worse. Atticus stepped past his heavy tread, causing the ancient deck to creak. Eyes up, holy or not, something made a mess here, he grunted. He prodded at a heap of cloth and bone fragments with his boot. I noted the pattern of scorch marks along one bulkhead scoring that looked like lost fire and claws. It was as if a skirmish had taken place in this hold. We advanced, tension rising. Daimalo clicked and buzzed in binary count, recording details and murmuring tech writes. He was here under orders from his Mechanicus superiors, as much as to aid me. I knew his priorities could diverge if we encountered Archotech or Cestes, but I trusted that at least for now, our goals overlapped. We both wanted to survive and catalog the horrors of this hulk. Why are we here? I recall Lyra asking me quietly as we navigated a narrow passage beyond the hold. It wasn't a challenge to my plan, but an earnest question tinged with wonder and dread. I answered over the vox as we walked, partly to steady myself with the sound of a human voice. This hulk, designated Mortis Thula by the Administratum, translated into real space at the edge of the Cadian sector a few weeks ago. Astropaths reported nightmares in the warp around its emergence. Rogue signals hinted at blasphemous events aboard. That was putting it mildly. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica picked up psychic screams from this drifting mountain of scrap, a sure sign of warp contamination. Our task is to assess the threat, and Emperor willing eliminate it, or at the very least mark this entire hulk for destruction, if we must. There were also rumors, though I didn't mention them aloud, rumors that another Inquisitor had taken an interest in Mortis Thula. Some said a radical, one who operated in secret, might have boarded ahead of us, or was pulling strings for his own agenda. But those were just whispers in the halls of the conclave. I had little evidence, only instinct that something more was at play. Still, it kept me wary. If true, a rival Inquisitor could be as dangerous as any demon in a place like this. We encountered our first corpse about 50 paces from the breach point. It slumped against a sealed bulkhead door, as if it died trying to get through. The body was relatively fresh, maybe a few weeks old at most, judging by the desiccation. An Imperial Navy uniform hung off its emaciated frame. By the tattered insignia on the collar, he'd been an officer. Atticus knelt and carefully turned the body over. The face was a riches of horror, mouth locked in a silent scream, eyes milky white and bulging, no obvious wounds. I'd seen death by terror before, but it's never a comforting sight. Lyra grimaced, no sign of how he died. Inquisitor, it's like he just gave up living. Her voice was hushed. Auspex, scan for toxins or radiation, I ordered. Daimalo complied, waving a sensor wand over the cadaver. He beeped an answer. No significant toxins, only mild background warped taint. I pried a few personal items from the corpse's stiff fingers, a cracked data slate, and some ID tags. The name read Captain Arctura Rex, Void Ship Merciful Dawn. None of us recognized the vessel, possibly one of the many ships consumed into this hulk over the centuries. Atticus gently closed the man's eyelids and made the sign of the Aquila over his chest. I murmured a brief benediction. Emperor grant, rest to this soul, and light to our path in the darkness to come. It was an omen finding a fellow servant of the Imperium dead so early in our mission. I felt a chill that had little to do with the ambient temperature. We moved on, prying open the sealed door that Captain Rex had died trying to breach. Beyond it, Dimmel's crimson optical lens warred as he scanned. Power readings beyond this portal, he reported in his tiny mech voice. A functioning generatorium, perhaps. This segment of the hulk retains partial power. That was remarkable. Most space hulks are completely dead, unless some Xenos have rigged up makeshift power sources. If a generatum still ran, it meant someone or something maintained systems here. Light and gravity in places perhaps useful for us, but it also meant potential dangers could have power for elevators, traps, or experiments. Cautiously, we continued through zigzagging corridors deeper into the warren. The architecture shifted subtly every 100 meters, the join lines of disparate ships evident in mismatched floors and wall designs. We passed through a section where elegant marble tiles and gilded paneling suggested a luxury passenger liner or a shrine ship. Ornate fresco of saints looked down on us from cracked ceilings. Then at the next hatch it all gave way to raw plast steel and utilitarian ironwork of a transport freighter, disorienting to say the least. At one junction, LRA paused to brush her gloved fingers over a wall engraved with high Gothic script. Faded lettering spelled out lines of the Lectitio Divinitatis. A chapel here, she wondered aloud. Indeed, as we shone lights about, we realized we stood in a half-collapsed ecclesiarchy chapel, wedged improbably between industrial corridors. Wooden pews were bolted to the floor, and a shattered altar lay to one side. A massive cracked stained glass window leaned against the far wall, the image it once depicted unrecognizable. Severina visibly relaxed in this space, drawn to the remnants of sanctity like a weary penitent. She inhaled deeply, and for a moment her haunted eyes cleared. I too felt an almost tangible easing of the oppressive atmosphere. The Emperor's presence had been strong here once. Even now, centuries later, a faint warmth lingered like the embers of a long-dead fire. We took a moment in that chapel to regroup. The idea of hope and faith seemed less abstract there beneath the painted gaze of the God Emperor, or what remained of it on the chipped mural above. I quietly ordered a short respite. The others nodded, grateful. Atticus muttered some folksy prayer under his breath, something his mother taught him. he once said. Dimelo inspected a rusted incense burner with academic interest. Severina kneeled briefly before the broken altar, tracing the aquila with her finger in dust and whispering the canticle of perseverance. I stood near the doorway, head bowed, and allowed myself a few spoken lines of scripture. Though I walk in the darkness, I shall fear no evil, for the Emperor is my light. The words echoed softly in the wrecked chapel. In that instant, I almost believed we were just on a normal mission, and that this place was like any other derelict, haunted by tragedy, but not by malevolence incarnate. It was a comforting lie. Our respite was cut short when Atticus's helm lamp fell upon something that made him stiffen. Inquisitor, look, he trained his light on the altar. I saw it immediately. A candle on the altar that should by all rights have long melted away. Yet it burned with a steady, sinuous blue flame. No breeze, no sign of recent life. Yet the candle was lit. It cast dancing shadows across the altar's toppled plinth. A ripple of unease passed through us. We're not alone. Someone's been here, Atticus said, voicing what we all thought. He stepped forward cautiously, weapon raised. Dimelo's mechandrates quivered. He chattered binary, speculating on chemical composition. Ever the scientist, he reached as if to pluck the candle for analysis. Don't, Sakana warned sharply, grabbing the tech priest's wrist with surprising firmness. Her eyes had that faraway gloss they took on whenever she scanned the warp. It's not natural flame. It feeds on the air of the immaterium itself. Warp fire. I felt a clench of dread. An ordinary candle burning after centuries is impossible enough. Warp fire burning in a sacred place is a blatant mockery. The thing's cold blue radiance suddenly seemed sickly and threatening. Back away. We're moving now, I ordered. I'd seen enough. Holy ground defiled by witchfire. If any of us had doubts that this mission was justified, that extinguished them. We filed out of that chapel quickly, leaving its unquaked behind. I vowed to myself that if I survived, I'd return with purification teams to cleanse and reconsecrate that place. It was a feeble consolation.
Think of after when we were still in the during. But one needs those lights of hope. As we proceeded deeper, I forced myself to focus on our objective. Our intel suggested the central fusion reactor of the Hulk, or one of them could be a focal point of the anomalies. If something like a warp core or a powerful artifact was aboard, likely it would be near a power source or have altered one. We carried a cyclonic demolition charge, capable of atomizing the better part of a starship. A last resort, should we confirm something too dangerous to let persist. My preference was to identify and retrieve any cursed artifact causing the disturbance, so it could be secured or destroyed under controlled conditions. Exterminators of the entire Hulk remained an option, but without certainty of threat, and with so many unknown relics aboard, it was a choice of final resort. Despite the dire circumstances, there was still some banter among us, then grim humor to keep fear at bay. As we navigated twisting halls, Atticus and LRA quietly compared who had more confirmed kills from our last outing. A Xeno-cult purge on Belisar Prime. Dimelo interjected with curt factual corrections when they exaggerated. Correction: 17 confirmed kills for subject Atticus, not 20, etc. Which prompted Atticus to roll his eyes and Lyra to stifle a laugh. I even felt a tug of a smile behind my rebreather mask. Such moments were small, humanizing sparks in the dark, bonding us. In hindsight, they were more precious than any of us realized. I find myself lingering on these memories, Perhaps because those human touches kept us sane in the beginning. In the end, all we had was each other, and piece by piece, the Hulk took even that away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We progressed, using the aspects and Dimolo's uncanny knowledge of starship layouts to guide us. Occasionally, we'd come upon a junction sealed by heavy bulkhead doors. Dimolo would trundle forward, interfacing with the ancient coitators to override locks. Those were tense moments, kneeling in dim light as he chanted binary K and sanctified each connection with sacred unants while we covered him. Every time a door groaned open, revealing another yawning black passage beyond, I felt the hairs on my neck rise. It was like opening the maw of some great beast, never knowing if you'd find empty gullet or rows of teeth waiting. The further in we went, the more signs of past violence we found. A stretch of crew quarters we passed through had walls riddled with bullet holes and scorch marks. The gravity plating there was glitching. One moment we'd be trudging through normal gravity. The next we'd stumble as it cut out, and our boots floated off the deck for a few surreal heartbeats. Picture frames and loose debris drifted around like lazy ghosts whenever the grab failed. More than once, a long dead body hidden in a corner would lift gently and bob into our path, causing Lyra or Atticus to curse in surprise. In that silent, weightless moment, I'd push the corpse aside, whispering a benediction. Then the gravity would slam back on with a thud, sending us and everything else stumbling down. It was exhausting both physically and mentally. Next we encountered what looked to be an old munition storage from an Imperial Navy ship. A vast hold stacked with rusted torpedoes and shell casings. Miraculously, or perhaps by the Emperor's grace, none had detonated when this section was wrecked and merged into the Hulk. Walking through that field of dormant explosives was nerve-wracking. One stray shot could have turned us into a brief starburst of atomic fire, but it stayed quiet. I did note, however, some of the warheads were missing, whether looted or repurposed. Who could say? It made me uneasy. At one point, we squeezed through a half-collapsed Medici bay. The once sterile white walls were painted with dried blood in erratic script. I paused to read one scroll, shining my light, and sounding out the high Gothic letters written in shaky hand. Let the eye not see, let the ear not hear. Blessed is ignorance. Charming on another wall. Deny the golden lyre. That one made my stomach drop. What does that mean? Lyra asked in a whisper, noticing my reaction to the blasphemy against the God Emperor. Nothing worth understanding, I replied tersely, pressing on. But a third message sprawled above the medbay's shattered doorway gave me pause. He is us, we are him. The phrase was repeated over and over, trailing off into indecipherable scratches. I exchanged a glance with Severina, who frowned, whether those were the ravings of a heretic or the result of the warped psychological torture on a survivor. They were unsettling. It was then that Sena touched my arm lightly. Inquisitor, here, she said, pointing to a blood-written line I had missed, half hidden behind an overturned surgical servo drone. She carefully levitated the drone aside with a minor telekinetic push. The metal shell squealed on the deck, revealing the writing. It read, "The fate that waits is the fate we made." I mouthed the phrase, parsing its meaning. Atticus let out a disgusted grunt. Sounds like cultist nonsense. Self-fulfilling prophecy gibberish. Perhaps, Sena murmured. Yet she looked troubled. Lyra quietly took a pic capture of the message. For the record, her scholar instincts at work even now. If fate was made, who was the maker? The question slithered in my mind. Unwanted, the one awaiting us,
or ourselves. I forced it aside, filing it away with all the other malignant ideas this place was seeding in me, those warnings. I brushed them aside outwardly, but each left a residue of unease. We left the Medici Bay in somber silence. In truth, after hours of tense exploration, we needed a respite. When we found a relatively intact crew, mess a little further on a small HEB chamber with only one doorway, I decided to call for a brief halt. We sealed ourselves inside that cramped room. The door's servo latch still had juice, thankfully, and took stock. The chamber might once have been a junior officer's mess, or a break room. A few overturned metal tables, a faded pin-up chart of some long-ago crusade on the wall, broken chairs strewn about. It felt almost normal, if you ignored the thin layer of ash on everything, and the eerie flicker of failing lumens. For a few precious minutes, we tended to minor cuts and scrapes, swapped power packs, and tried to steel our minds. ATB Taze passed around ration bars from his kit. The act of eating, of chewing something tangible, reminded us of life beyond the nightmare. We chewed in silence at first, the taste of stale nutrient paste almost welcome for its familiarity. Dimelo was muttering into a handheld Vox unit, creating an audio log of what we'd seen so far. His calm mechanical recitation, timestamp, no sign of hostiles, evidence of cult presence, was oddly comforting. Aelrai slid down against a wall next to me, removing her helmet for a moment, to rub her face and push sweat-damped hair back from her brow. She caught me watching and managed a tiny, tight smile. Quite the haunted house, isn't it? You could say that, I replied, keeping my tone light. Worse than that nest of Jan Steelers on Vanna, or better. She actually chuckled softly. Oh, this is worse. Jan Steelers don't write creepy messages on the wall. Adakis overheard and gave a low laugh. I'll take bugs you can shoot over ghosts that whisper any day. Severina sat with her back to a corner, rocking slightly as she silently mouthed a litany to calm her spirit. I didn't disturb her. She was fighting on the immaterial front as much as we were on the material. I took the moment to check in on each of them, asking in hushed tones how they fared. Adakis responded with gallows humor. My hair is still pretty, ma'am. Nothing else matters, which drew a snort from Lyra. Dallo simply nodded and rattled off some bio readings, his way of saying he was fine. Lyra admitted her nerves were tingling like a live wire, but under control. Severina just gave a thin smile and said, "The Emperor guides my thoughts. Brave souls, all of them." Satisfied, I finally allowed myself to sink down and rest for a minute. Thrown, I was more tired than I realized. The adrenaline had kept me going, but in that small pause, the weight of what we'd seen, and the anticipation of what lay ahead pressed down. I closed my eyes, intending only to blink and breathe for a heartbeat. Sleep, or something like it, took me before I knew it. Despite my intent, I dreamed. Emperor save me, I dreamed. It began as a memory, vivid and deceptively gentle. I was a girl of about 13, back at the Schola Progenium on Alea 7. I knelt in the chapel of the novices, candlelight painting warm colors on the stone columns. In my trembling hands was a leather-bound prayer book. I recognized the moment my last night at the Schola, the night before. Inquisitor Mariana Voss came to claim me as an acolyte. In the dream I recited the evening prayer, voice soft and high with youth. Though the darkness closes, I am the light. Though the Emperor is distant, he is with me. The familiar words echoed sweetly. A gentle hand rested on my shoulder. I looked up to see Father Provost Daniel, the scholar's confessor, who had been something like a parent to we war orphans. He smiled kindly. "Do you fear the path ahead, child?" he asked. "I only fear failing him," my young self replied in a small voice. "I fear that I may stray from the light." He squeezed my shoulder reassuringly. "Faith will be your lantern in the dark. Trust in the Emperor's plan. Your fate is his will." His voice reverberated with comforting certainty, but as he spoke, the candle flames around us began to gutter one by one. The shadows in the chapel deepened unnaturally. Father Daniel's face seemed half shrouded in darkness. His grip on my shoulder tightened, not comforting anymore, but painful. I tried to stand was. "Father," he leaned down. His face slipped into the light again, and it wasn't Father Daniel at all. Now I saw the face of Inquisitor Forge smirking at me, his eyes glinting with cruel amusement. "Fate, child," he said, though his voice doubled with the confessor's gentle tones, a dissonant echo. "Your fate is already written. Every struggle known and anticipated." I gasped and staggered back, but I wasn't a child anymore. I was myself, an adult in my inquisitorial carapace, standing in that chapel of my youth. Forge loomed over me in Daniel's robes, his friendly guise melting away to his true form. The chapel around us began to warp. Stone pews decayed into rusted metal. The incense turned to choking smoke. The stained glass windows showed not saints, but mocking, ever-changing symbols. I raised my bolt pistol suddenly in my hand and fired, shouting a denial. The bolt struck Forge's chest, but he shuddered and split into 2 figures, then 4, each one an aspect of him, or perhaps of me. One wore Father Daniel's face, one was Forge, one was a hulking silhouette wreathed in flame, and the last was me, an older version, gaunt and laughing with hollow eyes. They spoke in unison. "Do you think you're hunting us, foolish little moth? The light you chase will consume you." Their laughter built, echoing from every corner. "No," I screamed. I fired again and again, bolts tearing the dream figures apart, but they only dissolved into shadows and reformed closer now. Suddenly, a blinding golden light burst through the smoke-filled chapel door. A towering figure in golden armor stepped through the outline of the God Emperor himself, as depicted in countless holy visions, light of the Astronopicon in hand. All 4 phantoms recoiled hissing. I felt searing joy and relief. "The Emperor, he has come." I tried to run toward the light, but my legs moved as if slogging through mud. "Please," I cried out, voice breaking, "help me." The golden figure reached out and shattered into 1,000 burning fragments, as if smashed like glass. The brilliant shards rained down, and where each landed, the floor began to burn with that same warp fire blue. The light that had seemed so pure twisted into an eerie cobalt inferno around me. I skidded to a halt, horrified. The golden shards on the floor were actually candles now, dozens of them, all alight with azure flames. From each flame, a face peered up the faces of my
companions, Lyra, Atticus, Isena, Demalo, each trapped in a candle's fire, mouths open in silent screams. I whirled around to find the phantoms. They were circling me. Forge was there, no longer split into illusions, but whole, and behind him towered a monstrous silhouette, with aven features, a cloak of feathers, and swirling galaxies in its eyes. The greater demon, manifest and magnificent, watching me with a predator's glee. Forge, or was it the demon speaking through him, raised a finger to his lips. "She," he cooed mockingly. "The light has abandoned you. Now you're in my realm." He and the demon merged, their forms blurring until I faced a many-winged, many-eyed horror, draped in the tattered remains of an inquisitor's cloak. It spoke in a chorus of voices. My father's voice, Lyra's voice, the adept's dying whisper, all layered atop Forge's sneer. You cannot fight destiny. You are exactly where you are meant to be, little Inquisitor. I was paralyzed, arms laying at my sides. The candle faces of my friends flickered, their silent screams intensifying. The demon's clawed hand reached out and closed around my throat, inexorable as fate itself. I choked, feet lifting off the ground as it hoisted me effortlessly. Its face, did it even have a true face, pressed close, a darkness with eyes that bored into my soul. You will join them. You will become me. Its maw opened, a swirling void ready to swallow me. I couldn't even muster a prayer. Terror had locked every muscle, every thought. I awoke with a lurch, a stifled cry on my lips, heart jackhammering in my chest. It took a second to realize I was still in the cramped hab chamber on the Hulk, not that impossible chapel of my nightmare. Lyra was kneeling beside me, gently shaking my arm. Inquisitor, you were shouting, she said, concern evident even through her helmet's vox. I blinked, sweat dripping into my eyes. I tasted bile and realized I had nearly vomited in my rebreather. Steadying myself, I forced slow breaths. It was a dream, only a dream. Yet it left a cold, real dread coiled in my gut. I'm fine, I managed more curtly than intended. I saw the others casting worried glances. Emperor, had I screamed out loud? It seemed I had. Adakis was by the door, peering out a crack, as if expecting something drawn by my outburst. I thought you were under psychic attack, Sena said softly. Her own face was drawn. Perhaps she'd sensed echoes of my nightmare. Just a nightmare, I lied. Fatigue. It's past. I got to my feet, motioning that we'd lingered long enough. The embarrassment of knowing I had cried out in my sleep, like some green cadet, burned at me. I pushed it down ruthlessly. Let's move. We've tried too long. The others didn't argue. In truth, I suspect they were glad to get moving again. Sitting still, one had time to think, to imagine, to fear. Action at least gave the illusion of control. As Atticus and Dallo unsealed the door and scouted ahead, Lyra touched my elbow gently. On a private Vox channel, she asked, "Are you sure you're all right? You said, well, something about the light abandoning us." I stiffened. So I had been raving. "Ignore it, LRI," I murmured. "Cinch is trying to undermine us. My faith is intact." She searched my face, what little she could see through my helmet visor, and nodded, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. I hated that my weakness had planted that seed. Another debt of pain for the bastard demon to pay one day. With that, we rejoined the others and slipped back into the hole, leaving that fleeting refuge and my nightmare behind. We pressed deeper. Soon flickers of light began to dance at the edges of corridors as power systems flickered to life. Daimalo had been right about parts of the Hulk maintaining power. Emergency lumens glowed weakly on ceiling struts here and there, casting intermittent pale radiance that created more shadows than it vanished. The sudden hum of an active conduit startled us. At one point, a thrumming vibration in the wall that faded after a few steps. The machine spirit of this place was sputtering, unpredictable. Presently, we found ourselves in a junction where multiple ship segments converged. The architecture was grotesquely fascinating here, like the fused vertebrae of different beasts. Ornate ribbed columns, from a Gothic warship jutted into the bulkhead of a Mechanicus explorator vessel's steel wall, welded together by ancient catastrophe. Great cables snaked along the floor and ceiling, many of them severed or chewed. Scorch marks marred surfaces in erratic splashes. Then among those marks we found more bodies. These were far less intact than Captain Rex had been. A pile of bones and ash lay against a ventilation grill. Another charred corpse fused to a metal bench crumbled to blackened flakes as Atticus gently prodded it. It was as if a great firestorm or psychic conflagration had raged through here, emulating everything alive. The air still smelled faintly of burned flesh even after who knows how long. Severina knelt by one skeletal remnant, touching the soot, her eyes unfocused with that telltale gleam of psychic sight. "There was warp fire here," she said quietly. "Souls seared as much as bodies." She traced a finger over the ground where strange swirling burn patterns were etched into the deck. It was like a sigh storm passed through. A heavy silence followed her words. Sigh storms, great tempests of warp energy, are rare outside of demon worlds. If such a thing happened here, it spoke of tremendous power or rage, possibly the death throes of a powerful sorcerer or the unleashed fury of a demon. Lyra's began to chime softly, disrupting our grim reverie. She frowned at the device. "Inquisitor, I'm getting something. Movement. Maybe it's erratic." Little blips popped on her scanner, then vanished. I took a look. The returns were fleeting there. Gone. There again on the other side. Machine spirits confused or the warps, playing tricks with OPEX returns. I muttered. Or something is moving in and out of range fast. Atticus cautioned, finger on his trigger. We advanced more guardedly than ever. Every corner could hide an ambush, every flicker of light perhaps illuminating a lurking horror. My eyes darted to each shadow, half expecting them to spring to life. "Daimalo, can you access any local quotator nodes?" I asked. If this junction had multiple ship systems merged, there might be a network port. The tech priest wordlessly extended a mecha dendrite, jacking it into a half-functioning console embedded in a wall niche. He worded and clicked as he interfaced, accessing memory coils' fragmentary data. He buzzed, multiple log sources overlapping, attempting cross-reference. We waited tensely, forming a perimeter around him. The corridor stretched into darkness ahead and behind. Our lights carved out a feeble sanctuary of visibility in an otherwise limitless void. Suddenly, the dim overhead illuminators surged, flaring bright blue for an instant before dimming again. Dimmel jolted, sparking at the connection. Interference significant scrap code presence. He rasped, yanking one cable free just as a surge of static electricity danced along the console. Before we could react, a nearby Vox speaker, one of the ancient announcement grills on the wall, crackled to life. A harsh warbling screech burst forth, making Lyra and Atticus worse. Then through that screeching emerged voices, plural, layered and distorted, as if multiple recordings were playing over each other. "Leave, run," a panicked human voice cut off by another. "Time broken. He hunts." This one, a woman's voice, fraught with terror. Then a third, calm and cold. The thrice-bound book followed by a guttural snarl or word in a language I didn't know. Finally, a whisper eerily clear. "Not who you think." I stood there, heart hammering, trying to pass the fragments. Then, just as abruptly as it began, the Vox went dead with a pop. The lights continued their low flicker as if nothing had happened. We exchanged uneasy looks. "Did I really hear that?" Lyra whispered, eyes wide behind her visor. "I heard it,
Atticus confirmed grimly, scanning our surroundings as if expecting a source to materialize. Nothing did. Demolo retracted his data spike, a keening binary lament issuing from his vocabulator like a wounded machine's curse. Coitator feedback data corruption, he said, his version of an apology for the scare. Fragmentary log fragments from multiple sources, possibly a warning. He sounded disturbed. Tech priests loathe things that defy logical cataloging. Thrice-bound book, I murmured. My mind immediately thought of the brief for this mission. Rumors of a profane text aboard, bound in chains and seals, an artifact of great interest to certain radical elements. Could it be real? And not who you think? Who was that referring to? No one had an answer. Severina rubbed her temples as if dispelling a headache, psychic backlash from whatever that was. I took a breath, forcing steadiness. Whether that was some Emperor-sent machine spirit warning, or just warp-scrambled ghosts, we know one thing. There's something here tied to a book. Our hunch about a central locust might be right. Stay sharp, they affirmed quietly, and we pressed on, leaving those scorched corridors and their disembodied warnings behind. Not long after, as we navigated a narrow companionway lined with reflective metal panels, some luxury liner's hall of mirrors perhaps, Atticus suddenly hissed, "Movement, right side." We all snapped to face the right, weapons ready. The mirrored wall there showed only our own tense reflections, but I saw it too, just for an instant in the corner of my eye. A figure that wasn't any of us darting in the reflection behind our own. We turned as one, shining lights back the way we came. Empty hallway. My pulse quickened. I saw it, I muttered. A tall, spindly silhouette, humanoid, just at the edge of the mirror, then gone. Could have been a trick of the light, Lyra ventured, though. Her tone was unconvincing. Atticus sniffed the air, as though he could sense an invisible intruder like a Fenrisian wolf. Finding nothing, he shook his head. If someone's watching us, they know we're coming. We resumed, but now every reflection, every shadow felt like it hid an observer. I've seldom felt so hunted. Ironically, we came here as the hunters, and now we were the ones being stalked by unseen eyes. Shortly after the mirror incident, as we stepped over debris and pushed through a hatch into what appeared to be an administratum office sector, tiny coitator cubicles and parchment files strewn about, we caught a new sound, faint, irregular, a muffled thump, scrape from somewhere to our left beyond a dented maintenance hatch. We froze. Atticus signaled silence with a hand gesture. Everyone held breaths. Thump, scrape, scrape. It was so soft, I thought it might be my imagination. We fanned out cautiously. I motioned to Lyra to check the ship did so. The device's screen flickered, then pinged one faint blip right by us. A closet or small chamber lay behind the hatch. Atticus braced, grasping the edge of the heavy maintenance hatch, and with a grunt of effort, forced it open, its powered tracks long dead. We trained lights and guns into the darkness within. What we found made Lyra gasp. Huddled in the cramped compartment was a man gaunt, wide-eyed, and clearly terrified. He wore ragged red robes of the Mechanicus, one lens of his augmentic eyes shattered and sparking. At our intrusion, he cringed, raising a cybernetic arm defensively. "No more, please, no more," he wailed hoarsely. My heart leapt. A survivor against all odds, a living human. This could be invaluable, or a deadly trap, or both. I quickly stepped forward, lowering my pistol slightly to appear less threatening. Not that it likely helped. "Identify yourself," I said firmly, but gently. We are Inquisition, Imperial allies. At the words Imperial, the man's one organic eye blinked rapidly. He lowered his arm a fraction, peering at me and my retinue's uniforms. Imperial, truly not another illusion. His voice was cracked, barely more than a whisper. We're real, I assured. With a glance, I signaled Lyra to scan him for weapons or explosives. Her aspects gave a quick sweep. No obvious threats on him. The adept, or so, he appeared slowly uncurled from his fetal huddle. He was middle-aged, or had been when
Hulk claimed him. Emaciation stretched his skin over bones. The left side of his face bore a lattice of cybernetic implants and a nasty burn scar. A patchwork of tubing ran from a port on his neck to an auto-injector on his hip, or perhaps a device that had kept him alive this long with nutrient drips. Emperor knows how long he'd been hiding here. Adept, state your name. I pressed, keeping my voice calm like soothing a panicked animal. My finger remained on my trigger. Compassion is one thing, but caution never left my mind. He swallowed hard, producing the rattling gulp.
Hail.
He managed. Puck Adept Third Class Explorator Team.
Oh, Throne, the team.
His remaining eyes suddenly brimmed with tears. Are any of them with you?
Did anyone else?
I shared a meaningful glance with Atticus, who gave a slight shake of the head. Hale's team was likely dead, judging by his condition. We haven't encountered any other survivors. I said carefully. Just you. What happened here? Adept Hale, what did you see? At that, Hale began to shake. He clamped his hands over his ears. No, can't recount. It hears when we speak of it, he mumbled. Severina stepped forward slowly, crouching near the man, but out of arm's reach. In a gentle voice, she recited, "Though darkness reign, the Emperor gives us eyes. Though silence deafens, the Emperor gives us ears." A simple prayer from the canticles of faith. Hale's cybernetic eye, and focused on her. He let out a shuddering breath, as if the familiar prayer was a lifeline. You are real, blessed Mechanicus. You're real. A sob racked him. I have been so alone. Sena offered a small, sad smile. You're not alone now. The man's relief quickly curdled into renewed panic. He reached out suddenly and gripped my arm, surprising me with his strength. You have to leave, he hissed urgently, filth-caked nails scrabbling on my armor. You don't understand. It knows you're here. It wants you to stay. It's all. Atticus moved in a flash, prying the Adept's hand off me to prevent any harm. Hale hardly noticed. His milky human eyes stared into mine, wild and pleading. He lied to us, lied to me, opened the way and left us to die. Who lied? I snapped, adrenaline spiking. Another Inquisitor. Was someone else here? Hale nodded spastically, a ragged laugh bubbling up. Inquisitor. Yes, he slurred. He promised knowledge, showed us wonders, but it was a trap. So clever, so beautiful a trap. His voice broke into a giggle that made the hairs on my neck rise. Forge. It had to be. My suspicions of a rival confirmed by a maddened Mechanicus Adept. Throne. What had Forge done to his followers? Lara stepped closer, lowering her pistol, trying a soft tone. Adept Hale, listen to me. We encountered messages about a book. A thrice-bound book. Do you know it? At the mention of the book, Hale's face contorted between ecstasy and agony. The book, the book, the book. Yes, we came for it. We found it. He suddenly jerked towards LRA, grabbing her by the shoulders with surprising ferocity. She froze. I read it. He shrieked inches from her faceplate. I saw everything. My birth, my death, all the strings. Too many strings. Before I could yank him off her, Hale released Lyra of his own accord and staggered back, clutching at an augment implanted in his temple. He said it would save us from uncertainty, that we could remake the future. But he is us. We are him. Hale began muttering that phrase repeatedly, rocking on his heels. Emperor's mercy. Lyra whispered, regaining her composure. The adept's outburst had rattled her, but she kept her pistol lowered. My mind raced. Forge had clearly used this adept, and perhaps others, to get to the book. The phrase Hale repeated the same we saw scrolled in blood earlier. He is us. We are him. Was that referring to the demon, or Forge, or even Sinchen? I tried another tack. Adept Hale, I said firmly. Look at me. He did. Whimpering, I removed my helmet, letting him see my face. Human, determined. His frantic gaze steadied a fraction. We are here to destroy or secure that book. We sent the creature that tormented you back into the shadows, at least for now. Tell us how to stop it for good. What is the book? What did it unleash? Hale blinked, tears cutting lines through the grime on his cheeks. He opened his mouth to speak, but then his expression slackened strangely. His organic eye rolled upward, and the red glow of his cyber eye flickered for an awful heartbeat. I thought him possessed anew. Severina sensed it first. Something's wrong. Hale convulsed. A gout of blood spewed from his mouth as he spasmed and collapsed to the floor, limbs twitching. We moved as one, Lyra and I grabbing his shoulders, Severina trying to steady his head. The adept's back arched unnaturally. His voice gurgled, then impossibly. A few words bubbled out, not in his tone, but in a wet mocking facsimile of Forge's. Not who you think. A final blood-choked laugh, and then his body went limp. Dimmel's Ospie's arm hummed over Hale's body. Life signs nil, he pronounced. Cause of death, catastrophic neural failure, possibly a kill switch implant. Indeed, I saw at Hale's temple where his hand had gone. The augment there was burned out, a tiny wisp of smoke rising. Forge must have put a fail-safe in his followers to prevent capture or betrayal. Emperor, damn him. He robbed this wretch of even the chance to confess. Atticus touched his own temple. Grim throne just like that. Poor sod. My jaw clenched with fury. I reached down and closed Hale's staring eyes. There was nothing more we could do for him, except ensure his killers paid. His last words though, not who you think. Echoing the machine Vox warning. Was it referring to Forge or someone in my team? The implication twisted my guts. Forge's malice and the demon's trickery combined had already sown distrust in my heart. Try as I might to deny it, the admonition to trust no one from a dying man did not help. Still, I stood and replaced my helmet, burying any visible doubt beneath a visor of impassive steel. Emperor, grant him peace, I murmured. Severina finished the sentiment in a whispered prayer. We had confirmation now. Another Inquisitor was here, had been pulling strings, and had found the artifact, a book of fate, thrice bound, and that his team had been wiped out, or worse for it. Forge had likely gone mad, or been corrupted fully. We couldn't turn back now, even if we wanted to. Too much was at stake. We press on, I said, perhaps more harshly than intended.
My anger was a cold knot in my chest. Eyes open. Watch for traps. Forge might have left surprises. My team nodded, rallying themselves. LRA's hand still shook slightly as she regripped her plasma pistol. I admired how she mastered the fear. Atticus muttered something about giving Forge a taste of his shotgun soon. Dimolo and Severina were somber, resolved, leaving Adept Hale's crumpled form. As gently as we could, we moved forward. There was nothing else to be done. By then I had a clear sense of where we needed to go downward. Dimolo's earlier data scrape and Hale's ravings all pointed to a sanctum deep near the ship's core. If a bound book of destiny existed, that's where it would be kept sealed and secured. Perhaps Forge had opened it there, or taken it, and moved. But either way, that was ground zero. We found a maintenance lift shaft, and climbed down ladders. Power was out, of course. Every footfall downward, the warp's presence thickened. Severina reported an ambient hum in her mind, like background noise rising. None of us liked the sound of that. Several times we had to detour around buckled decks or collapsed stairwells. The Hulk's recent structural groans worried me. If it decided to break apart, or shift back into warp transit while we were inside, well, we'd never leave. At length we reached a wide access corridor that by Dimolo's reckoning led directly to the primary generator and adjoining command decks of one of the larger ships at the Hulk's heart. Large stenciled letters in high Gothic labeled parts of it, Reactor 12 and Main Sanctum Access. That latter in a different script, perhaps added by someone later. Someone like Forge. Gravity seemed stable here, and indeed faint emergency lumens cast a low crimson glow along the passage. We stacked up at a heavy blast door engraved with warding runes and purity seals. The seals were mostly torn or defaced. Seeing that made my blood boil. Forge or his acolytes must have ripped them off. This looks like it. Lyra breathed, swallowing. Her off-specs showed dense chambers beyond. I took point. The door had a sophisticated lock, a gene-coded scanner, and triple-layer pass key. But the panel lay ajar. Guts spilled out. Wires spliced. Someone had already bypassed it. Dimolo, open it. He interfaced, and after a few tense seconds, the massive door shuttered and began to part. My heart rate climbed. I muttered a final prayer of absolution under my breath, readying myself for whatever lay beyond. The door yawned open, revealing darkness. We stepped through, weapons raised. The chamber beyond was vast, circular, and smelled of antique dust, and something acrid ozone and sorcery. My helmet lamps illuminated, rows of shelves toppled over, scrolls and books scattered, flickering cogitator screens lining the walls showing static or frozen runes. At the center, on a raised dais, stood a heavy pedestal of black iron. Upon that pedestal rested an ominous object, a great tome easily half a meter tall, and bound in cracked leather. Chains of silver and brass crisscrossed it, secured by 3 heavy locks with 3 different seals. One bore the inquisitorial sigil, one the cog of the Mechanicus, and one a personal mark, a stylized trident within an eye. It was unmistakable, the thrice-bound book. For a moment, none of us dared breathe. The book itself exuded a psychic weight that even I, no psyker, could feel a thrum in the air like standing before an idling warp engine. The pages were rimed with frost or something like it. The very vapors around it shimmered. Severina nearly buckled to her knees as the warp pressure intensified. So much power, she gasped. Lyra stepped forward involuntarily, her eyes glued to the book. I grabbed her shoulder. Steady. She blinked as if waking from a trance and nodded, cheeks flushing in embarrassment. Atticus trained his shotgun at the book, as if expecting it to sprout legs and attack. Honestly, given what we'd seen, I didn't blame him. We ascended the dais slowly, eyes scanning the room for any sign of Forge or other threats. No sign of the man himself, no bodies either, which was curious. The pedestal was covered in inscriptions. I recognized wards of binding, prayers of sealing. These were placed by my order, presumably long ago when the book was first contained. Many were scratched out or overlaid with alien glyphs. Now it looked like someone had tried to magically ward this place, and someone else had deliberately broken those wards. LRA read some of the High Gothic aloud. Know that which is bound herein is the gateway to damnation and hope alike. By order of the Holy Inquisition, let none but the anointed dare trespass. Gateway to damnation and hope alike. I repeated under my breath. The paradox struck me as fittingly Cinchian. Knowledge could deign a save depending on how it's used or misused. Damelo circled the dais, his mechandrites quivering with excitement despite the danger. By the Omnizer, a preserved data trove of the ancients, he whispered. A ruck. I shot him a warning look. He composed himself, but I could tell it took effort. So that's it. The cause of all this. Atticus growled. Let's blow it to hell. And be done. Ever direct. The veteran. My instinct screamed to agree to obliterate this blasphemy right now. But another part, colder and calculating, noted, if Forge had opened it, simply blowing it up might not undo whatever was set in motion. Also, some sliver of me, deep and quiet, wanted to know what was inside, wanted to understand. I crushed that sliver down. Before I could issue any order, a slow clapping echoed from the darkness beyond the circle of our lights. A rich, mocking clap. Clap, clap. Truly bravo. I honestly doubted you'd make it this far. My blood turned to ice. I knew.
That voice, a tall shape, stepped out from behind a bank of coitators into the dim red glow. Inquisitor Cathan Forge. He looked surprisingly composed for a man presumed dead or corrupted, his attire, still the dignified long coat, though stained with blood at the side. A neatly trimmed beard framed his thin smile, and his eyes emperor. His eyes glowed faintly with warp light, as if a blue flame danced in each pupil. All our guns snapped towards him, but he merely spread his empty hands in a casual gesture, showing he held no weapon. At least none we could see against a psyker that meant little. Perhaps most jarring was that he appeared utterly human, even sympathetic. No horns, no fangs, not even a crazed expression. If anything, he looked like a tired scholar interrupted in his study, albeit one with a predatory curl to his lip. Forge, I snarled. It took all I had not to immediately order Atticus to open fire, but something held me back. The knowledge that if he was as far gone as I feared, a sudden attack might spring whatever trap he'd prepared, and I was certain he had something prepared. He inclined his head in a shallow bow. Inquisitor Tag, we finally meet in the flesh under trying circumstances. I wish I could say welcome, but it's a bit of a mess right now. He chuckled as if sharing a joke at a collegium dinner. My team spread out slightly, forming a half circle facing him. I kept my bolter leveled. In the Emperor's name, I declare you excommunicate traitorous Cathan Forge. Formal words, but they spilled out naturally. Stand down, drop any sorcerous implements, and surrender. This will be your only chance. Forge sighed theatrically. Always straight to business. You haven't changed since the conclave on Tricholine. You know, he referred to a debate we'd both attended years ago, though we hadn't spoken directly then. Still the righteous hammer, never pausing to consider the subtleties. Enough, I snapped. I know what you've done here. Emperor knows how many you sacrificed. Memories of Hale's agony flashed in my mind. Sacrificed? Forge's brows rose. Oh, you mean poor Hale and the others. Casualties of war, my dear. Nothing more. You of all people should understand that. Or did those troopers you lost on Gathalemor not count since they died for your mission? His words stabbed. I had lost men on Gathamor to a demon. Yes, but that was different, wasn't it? Atticus's finger tightened on his trigger at Forge's callous dismissal. You bastard, he growled. We found Hale. He told us everything before you killed him. Forge gave a sad, knowing smile. I doubt that. Hale knew very little of everything. I'm sure he told you garbled half-truths soaked in madness. Did he mention how he begged to read the book? How I warned him it could overwhelm an unaugmented mind? But no, he insisted, and thus his end. The casual shrug that followed set my teeth on edge. My mind raced. Talking was buying time. Perhaps for him, perhaps for us. My eyes flicked about. Was the demon lingering, preparing to strike, while we were distracted? Severina subtly shook her head when I glanced at her, a sign she didn't currently sense the demon nearby. Perhaps it retreated when Forge arrived, or was within him somehow. Forge seemed to sense my unspoken question. He waggled a finger. If you're looking for our mutual friend, he's indisposed. That little banishment trick you pulled at the generator. Yes, I know about that. Sent him howling for the time being. Bravo on that as well. Very resourceful, using the book's true name index against him. He gave an approving nod that made my skin crawl like a proud teacher praising a student. Lyra's head snapped toward me at that revelation. She hadn't realized I'd gleaned the demon's true name from the book mid-battle. There hadn't been time to explain. The fact Forge knew meant he'd likely been watching us remotely or scrying. We had indeed been dancing on strings. You've been observing us, I said, stalling, trying to glean info. My bolter remained fixed on his heart. Could I kill him before he unleashed Warpcraft? Possibly, but something told me this confrontation needed to play out a little further, that there was more at stake than just shooting him down. He spread his arms, pacing slowly to the side. We shifted to keep aim. Of course, the moment you set foot on Mortis Thule, I was aware. The changer of ways certainly was too. We've watched your progress with great interest. Frankly, I'm impressed. You're far more persistent than the other lackey. Is the conclave sent? So, there had been others. Or was that a lie to rattle me? No time to confirm. My eyes narrowed. You led us on quite a chase, sabotaging systems, sending false visions. Was that all you and your pet demons doing? Toying with us? He smiled. Some tricks were mine. The false Navy rescue signal, that was me, hoping I might lure you off before things got messy. Alas, you were too sharp for it, and our friend Hale gave away the game anyway. Other tricks like your charming nightmare, or the whispering walls, those were the daemon mostly. He loves theatrics. We coordinated to a point,
but I won't claim credit for all." Severina glared at him, fury in her normally gentle features. "How could you serve that thing? You were Ordu Mullahs. You above all should have known." Forge interrupted with a raised hand. "Spare me the sanctimony, Psyche. I didn't serve it. This was a partnership of convenience. Sencha's child wanted the book open to spill its secrets, and sow some chaos. I wanted it open to glean what I could for humanity's sake. We used each other, and I assure you I intended to come out on top." He glanced at me. "Our dear friend here just accelerated my timetable a bit. You intended to control a greater demon of Zench, to use that knowledge." My disbelief was genuine. If hubris had a face, it was Caitlin Forge's calm, rational gaze at that moment. He gave a thin smile. "Why not? Someone must break the stalemate of ignorance. The Ordu Kronos thought as much, until they were purged for it. I carry on their work, and I came so close with this book." He nodded towards it. I saw a tapestry of possibilities, threads of cause and effect stretching across the millennium. I saw futures where mankind stands unassailable, and futures where we are extinguished like a candle in a tempest. His eyes gleamed fever bright now. He was getting lost in his own vision. "I guided you here. In fact, I nudged the demon to allow your approach, because I thought perhaps we could share this victory. Two inquisitors, enlightened together." He actually sounded wistful. I felt a mix of pity and disgust. Forge had always been rumored radical, but this was beyond the pale. Yet some sick part of me understood the temptation. I too had felt the pull of the book's power, that promise of certainty in an uncertain universe. It took all my moral strength to stand against that allure. Perhaps if circumstances were different, I could have been in his place. The thought chilled me. "I'm going to give you one chance, Forge," I said through clenched teeth. "Surrender. Return with me to face the Conclave's judgment. There may be something left of you to save." Even as I said it, I doubted it. The taint on him was palpable. He chuckled. "Ever the beautiful Inquisitor. Even now, you can't see that I'm trying to save us all. If I walk into that conclave chamber, those blinkered old men will strip me of everything, perhaps execute me and lock this knowledge away to rot just as they always do. Meanwhile, the Imperium will go on stumbling in the dark, as it has for 10,000 years." He shook his head. "No, I refuse. I will chart a new course, and if they brand me heretic, so be it. You and every other damned radical who ends up summoning the very thing they think they control. Listen to yourself, Forge. You've become the cackling villain of a cautionary tale." Forge's veneer of patience finally cracked. "Enough," he snapped, eyes flaring. "I tried civility. I tried to include you in the next step of human evolution. But you're just like the rest. Afraid of truth, slaves to destiny, because you fear what happens if you seize it." I steadied my aim at his chest. "We fear what happens when arrogant fools like you think you are above sin and punishment," I said quietly. "Last warning, Forge. Stand down or we will put you down." He fixed me with a long, almost regretful look. "I truly am sorry it's come to this." Then his lips curved in a wicked smile. "But I'm afraid I still need that book, and I can't have you interfering further." All hell broke loose in an instant. Forge's eyes blazed and his form shimmered. Atticus, sensing the danger, fired first. A hail of shotgun pellets roared out, but Forge moved with inhuman speed, sidestepping. A few pellets grazed his coat, one drawing blood from his left arm. He snarled and flung out that arm toward Atticus. With a telekinetic blast, Atticus was lifted and hurled across the chamber like a doll. He slammed into a stack of metal cabinets with a crash and crumpled motionless. Ulrich screamed his name and unleashed her plasma gun at Forge, the incandescent bolt illuminating the whole sanctum. Forge threw up an invisible barrier. The plasma blast splashed against an unseen dome inches from him, cascading harmlessly off and melting a hole in the ceiling. From beneath his robes, he deployed a hidden needle pistol on a mech tendril. A flurry of micro darts sprayed toward Forge. One actually pricked his neck. He ripped it out and flicked it aside, unfazed, likely his warp-charged vitality shrugged off the toxin. I fired my bolter, aiming not at Forge, but at his immediate area, hoping the shrapnel of a detonating bolt could circumvent his shield. Explosions popped around him, and he grimaced as a few fragments nicked his cheek and thigh. My next shot, he literally caught in midair with a gesture. The bolt round froze, suspended, then redirected and sent whizzing past my helmet, detonating against the far wall. The message was clear. He could stop my shots now. Severina's eyes rolled back as she summoned her will. She extended her hands, and from her palms arced crackling tendrils of lightning. Pure warp disruption, aimed at Forge's psyche. He staggered as one tendril struck his shoulder, the warp energies tugging at his very soul. He hissed in pain or fury. "You little witch," he spat, and with his other hand made a crushing motion. Severina gasped, lifted off her feet, clutching her throat. An unseen force was strangling her. She thrashed, boots dangling inches above the floor. The entire chamber rattled with psychic backlash. The book on the pedestal rattled too, its chains clinking. The air grew thick with ozone and spite. Ulrich, desperately trying to help Severina, dropped her plasma gun too slow to recharge for a second shot anyway, and drew her combat knife. She lunged at Forge's back with a fierce cry, aiming to drive the blade into his neck. Without even turning, Forge flung her away with another telekinetic shove. Ulrich flew backward, hitting the deck steps with bone-cracking force. I heard her scream as her arm bent, unnaturally broken. Then she tumbled down and lay still, groaning. Rage and anguish fueled me. I let out a roar of defiance, drawing my chainsaw with one hand while firing my bolt pistol with the other in a fury. Forge whirled to face me, and our weapons met the whirring adamantine teeth of my chainsword, screeched against a sudden flicker of energy in his fist. He wasn't holding a weapon, but a conjured blade of warp energy sprang from his palm, a crackling staff of coruscating blue shaping into a sword of his own. A witchblade, he parried my strikes with impossible speed. Our blades clashed again and again, sparking. Every impact sent jolts up my arm. He was stronger than any normal man, but adrenaline and righteous wrath kept me in the dance. I became dimly aware that Delo had skidded over to where Lytra fell, dragging her out of the line of fire. Atticus was slowly stirring across the room, alive at least. Severina had collapsed, gasping as Forge had released his chokehold on her to engage me. For a moment, it was just Forge and I, crossing swords in the red gloom at the center of that profane sanctum. The book looming beside us, the zinging snarl.
My chain-sorted teeth chewed at his force weapon, while his psychic blade hummed and spat arcs of warp light. I pressed with a snarl, firing my pistol point blank. He twisted. The bolt grazed his ribs, detonating and spraying blood. He grunted, and his concentration faltered for a half second, his conjured sword flickering. I seized that chance. With a shout of invocation to the Emperor, I surged forward and smashed my armored forehead into Forge's face. The crunch was sickeningly satisfying. He reeled, dropping his warp sword, which fizzled out, not giving him an instant to recover. I shoulder barged him. We both crashed into the pedestal, and with that impact, something unimaginable happened. The book's chains snapped. Perhaps it was triggered by Forge's proximity, or will, or perhaps the runes of sealing finally gave out under the psychic strain saturating the room. With a sound like a sigh, the 3 heavy locks fell open in unison, clattering to the floor. I saw Forge's eyes light up, not with fear, but triumph. Blood streamed from his broken nose, yet he grinned through crimson teeth. "Yes," he croaked, reaching towards the now unbound book. "No," I shouted, tackling him away. We both fell to the floor on the Dessa's platform, grappling. He struck my helmet with a telekinetic punch that made my ears ring and forced me off. Each of us scrambled to our feet on opposite sides of the pedestal. The thrice-bound book now lay unbound, cover slightly ajar. The air around it swirled with multicolored currents. My heart pounded. If Forge got his hands on it now. In this state, who knew what horror would come forth? Forge raised one hand toward me and one toward the book, clearly intending to multitask attack me while snatching his prize via sorcery. Before he could, a last bolt struck him square in the leg. Attakis, bless him, had recovered enough to fire from his crumpled position across the room. Forge buckled, snarling in pain, as his thigh smoked. That gave me the opening. I lunged and seized the book in both hands. The moment I touched it, a shockwave of raw warp energy blasted outward. I did not expect it. None of us did. It was like being at the epicenter of a psychic explosion. I felt a surge of utter cold and utter heat flood through me. Images and voices screaming at the edges of my mind. Severina shrieked, clapping her hands over her ears. Attakis was thrown fully to the ground, unconscious. Lara and Damalo were shielded somewhat by distance, and the Dessas, but even they winced and cowed. Only Forge and I remained standing by virtue of sheer will and our proximity to the epicenter. That wave washed through us. The book's covers flew fully open in my grip, pages of flutter, though no breeze existed. I saw symbols, diagrams, moving illustrations on the yellowed parchment, lit with ethereal glow. My eyes skimmed involuntarily, and I swear I saw my own name flit by in a passage alongside dates. I recognized my birth date, the day I was ordained a full inquisitor, perhaps even the date of this very battle. Forge laughed, a ragged, ecstatic sound. "Do you see it now?" he cried, staggering, but forcing himself upright. "Do you see the threads of fate? Yick, it's beautiful." He limped toward me, arm outstretched. He wasn't even casting a spell now. He was just focused on reaching the book, transfixed by the swirling pages and whatever revelations they offered. And me, I faltered. The book was open before me. A dozen pages turned of their own accord, each stopping just long enough for my mind to register part of what was written. I saw an illustration of a woman who looked strikingly like me, standing at a crossroads of stars, holding a flaming sword in one hand and a tome in the other. The text around it was in High Gothic and another script simultaneously, shifting. She will face the choice of damnation or salvation, and in choosing will pave one of two roads. Forge was now just a pace away, hand reaching. Lara, God's bless her fierce soul, suddenly sprang up from behind the Dessas with her broken arm dangling and shoved her shock maul. an inquisitorial baton weapon she carried against Forge's side. With a crackle of energy, the maul discharged, shocking him. He howled and backhanded her, sending her reeling. But the interference was enough. He had lost that final moment's advantage. I snapped the tome shut with all my strength, slamming the heavy covers together. The force of it knocked me to one knee. Forge bellowed, "No," in despairing fury, lurching toward me. With the book closed, clarity returned, at least relatively. I shook off the haze of the past minute. Forge loomed over me, raising a fist, crackling with warp fire to strike me down. In that split second, I acted purely on instinct drilled by countless combats. I dropped the book at my feet and drew my bolt pistol, pressing it upward under Forge's chin. His eyes widened. For an instant I saw the man, just a man, realize he might actually die. "Burn in hell," I snarled and pulled the trigger. The bolt round blew out the back of Kethan Forge's skull in a burst of gore and fire. His body fell limp, crashing to the floor beside me, face upturned in shock, eyes already dimming. A small mercy perhaps, that he likely never registered his death beyond that initial surprise. Silence followed, broken only by our ragged breathing and the crackle of a small fire where Forge's warp energy had ignited his coat. It was over. Emperor. It was over. The book lay closed at my knees, still emitting faint tendrils of warp vapor, but bound shut once more by my own grip. Forge's corpse sprawled inches away, the cunning light in his eyes extinguished permanently. I should have felt triumph or relief. Instead, I felt empty and horrified by the toll around me. "LRA Adicus Severina," I gasped, turning to see what remained of my team. Severina was slumped against a pillar, conscious but bleeding from the nose, eyes glassy with exhaustion and shock. She looked at me, managing a weak smile. "We were here," she whispered. Atticus gave a thumbs up from where he lay on the floor, not even attempting to rise. His armor was dented, and blood dripped from a gash on his scalp, but trust that stubborn man to signal he was alive. Lyra, she had dragged herself halfway up the Dessa's steps, her right arm hanging broken at her side. "I'm all right," she panted unconvincingly, tears of pain on her cheeks. But her eyes were on Forge's dead form, and they blazed with fierce satisfaction. Dimelo clanked into view, two of his mechondrites snapped and sparking, but otherwise intact. He immediately moved to Sena's side to check her vitals, and then to Atticus. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. They were alive, wounded, traumatized, but alive. A wave of gratitude and pride washed through me. Emperor, these brave souls. The chamber, however, was not inclined to let us savor anything. The structural groaning we'd heard earlier began again, louder now. Our battle had destabilized something. Perhaps the reactor we stood near, or the warp energies released by the book, or the hull's own long decaying form reaching a breaking point. "Magus," I addressed Demalo. "Status." He consulted a flickering screen. "Seismic activity detected. Warp core fluctuations rising. The Hulk. This section is collapsing, and a warp translation might be imminent." His mechadendrite tapped rapid commands. "We should evacuate immediately." I didn't need further urging. I stooped, securing the thrice-bound book with a length of chain. One chain remained intact enough to wrap around it, though without locks. I literally held the ends firm in my hand. I wasn't about to leave it for the warp to reclaim. Atticus was struggling to get up, wheezing.
Lyra moved to help him with her one good arm, while Dimelo boosted from the other side. Severina managed to stand, though she was shaky and had to lean on me for support. We were a battered, limping lot, but by the throne we were alive, and we had our prize, or our curse. Just as we hobbled out of the sanctum, a shrill keening sound erupted, a familiar warp howl. A sickly blue glow lit the far end of the sanctum chamber behind us. I dared to glance back where Forge's blood pooled. Something coalesced, a vaguely humanoid outline, tall and thin, with burning eyes of hate. The greater demon remanifesting, perhaps anchored by Forge's death or the residual power. But it was unstable, not fully through the veil yet. It didn't need to fully form to kill us though. Even a partial emergence could lash out with warp power. Go now, I urged my team, practically shoving them down the corridor. Dimelo used a burst of his exomotive power to propel Atticus and Lyra ahead. Severina and I staggered after behind us. The unearthly scream of the demon echoed, furious and piercing. We ran half dragging, half limping through shaking halls. Bulkheads were beginning to buckle. The emergency lumens flickered out entirely, leaving only our bobbing helmet lights and the sporadic flash of shorting circuits to illuminate our escape. The hulk was tearing itself apart now, maybe triggered by the demon's rage, or just the final death throes of a construct pushed too far. We retraced our steps toward our entry point, as best we could. Dimelo's memorized schematics proved invaluable, even as sections we'd passed through before were now collapsed or flooded with hissing steam. More than once we had to detour, once crawling through a maintenance tunnel single file, while the passages on either side roared with fire from ruptured promethium lines. At some point, the distinct pop of a warp translation spiked behind us, a sure sign Mortis Thula was slipping back toward the immaterium. If we didn't get off this thing soon, we finally reached our breach point, the exact airlock corridor where we'd first stepped aboard. Miraculously, our breaching pod was still attached outside, the aperture we'd cut still open to the void, sealed only by our pod's docked presence. The hulk's gravity was fluctuating badly now. We were alternately weightless and heavy as we clambered into the pod's open hatch. I was last to push through, shoving the precious cursed book in ahead of me. The moment I did, a force like a giant's fist trembled through the hulk. The docked pod lurched, metal groaning. I saw cracks spider-webbing in the inner airlock door of the hulk and realized it was now or never. In, I cried, slamming the pod hatch override. Severina and Lyra pulled me inside. As the pod's hatch hissed closed through its porthole, I saw the hulk's corridor fracture beyond. Swirling unreality glinted. The Geller field in our little pod hummed as it activated autonomously. Blessed technology. With a thunder of bolts, the pod disengaged. An instant later, the hulk's interior pressure blasted out the breach behind us, propelling our pod, tumbling into space like a kicked can. Atticus, semi-conscious on a bench, weakly asked, "We're out." No one answered verbally, but the slight shift to true weightlessness, and the dwindling view of Mortis Thula, tumbling away on our external auger display, was answer enough. The space hulk, now half shrouded in a sickly warp glow, did not linger in real space. Even as we watched from a safe distance, reality around it began to ripple. With an implosive flicker, the bulk of Mortis Thula vanished, leaving only smaller debris and a smear of warp energy that quickly dissipated. It was gone, thrust back into the immaterium, or scattered across dimensions. I couldn't say. We drifted in the void, a tiny life raft of sanity bobbing amid scrap and starlight. It was over. Truly this time over. I sagged against the pod's wall. Lyra, cradling her broken arm, offered me a shaky grin. Severina closed her eyes, lips moving silently, perhaps thanking the Emperor. Daimelo was already fussing with the pod's short-range vox to hail any nearby Imperial assets for retrieval. Adacus coughed and spat blood, but managed a thumbs up again, the stubborn goat. And on the floor of the pod, clamped firmly within a stasis crate we'd hauled for this very purpose, lay the thrice-bound book, now truly thrice-bound again, as I'd secured it with Forge's fallen chain locks and activated a field to suppress its influence. It was silent now, just an ominous hunk of leather and metal, but I could
still feel a faint tug from it, as if a part of it lived in my very thoughts after touching it. I realized I was still clutching half of Forge's rosette in my fist. The impact in the sanctum had torn it from him, and somehow I'd picked it up unconsciously. I looked at the broken symbol, and a wave of conflicting emotion welled up. Sorrow for a comrade, lost to corruption, anger at his betrayal, pity for his misguided brilliance, and a sickening kernel of understanding of why he did it. I closed my fist around the shattered rosette until the edges bit into my glove. Then I tucked it into a pouch, a reminder and a warning. Only then, in the quiet safety of that drifting pod, did I allow myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. I nearly broke. Then hot tears threatened at the corners of my eyes as the adrenaline drained and the enormity set in. But I didn't break. I am an inquisitor of the Imperium of Man, and we do not break. While duty remains, we would have months of recovery and debrief ahead, physical wounds to mend, psychological wounds to tend, reports to write that no one would fully believe, secrets to bury, perhaps medals or inquisitorial censures, or both in store for us. But in that moment, I pushed all that aside. I turned on my suit's internal Vox recorder, a habit for mission logs. But this wasn't about facts and figures now. This was about me processing. Perhaps it was vain or foolish, but I needed to speak, if only to an unhearing coitator to pour out the storm inside me. I spoke softly, so as not to disturb the others, recounting everything in a low, even tone. Maybe it was for any inquisitor who came after. Maybe it was just for myself, a confession to the void. As I speak these words into the recorder, I catch myself wondering whether I'll ever let anyone hear them, or if I'll purge this record before we reach port. It contains not only facts, but my very soul raw and bared. Perhaps too much of my soul. My thoughts wander as I dictate. I think about Forge, how I once looked up to his intellect in our rare interactions, and how I scorned those who whispered he was a radical. Now I suspect he had indeed been among the Ordo Chronos, an Ordo Minoris long thought lost. It would explain his obsession with temporal anomalies, with controlling fate. He tried to carry their torch and was consumed by it. In trying to tame destiny, he became a slave to it. And what of me? Who am I now after walking through hell in the shadow of the Changer? I feel uncertain, and I despise that part of me. Fears that in the crucible of this mission something fundamental has altered. I touched that book, if only for an instant, and it touched me back. I can't articulate it to the others. They wouldn't understand. Or maybe I'm afraid they would. But in that moment, holding it, I glimpsed the grand tapestry of possibilities, and now the normal flow of time feels thinner. I find myself anticipating someone's words before they speak or getting flashes of déjà vu that last too long. Maybe it's just shock. Emperor, I hope it's just shock. I'll be subject to purity tests and psychological evaluations. No doubt, rightly so. I welcome them. If there's taint in me, I want to know and purge it. My greatest asset, my certainty in my purpose has been shaken, and I need to rebuild it, brick by brick, scrutiny by scrutiny. I'll endure the mind probes and holy water and fasting and whatever else the conclave demands. I am not Forge. I will not hide corruption under intellectual rationalizations. Still, a treacherous thought creeps in even now. We have the book. I have seen what it can do. If its knowledge could truly guide us to better ends, do I have the strength to destroy it? To snuff out that spark of hope as the warning called it? Or will I argue to lock it away so that maybe someday when we're wiser we might use it? Is that pragmatism, or the first step down Forge's path? I rub my tired eyes. Even now I catch myself rationalizing reasons to keep it. How Zinch must be chuckling at me. Our shuttle rescue beacon pulses silently. The Navy frigate Vigilance that answered our hail is en route, their captain's voice already squawking concerned orders to prepare for our retrieval. Soon I'll be among allies again in clean illuminated corridors where reality holds firm throne. I yearn for that mundane normally paperwork, debriefings, tea in a void ship canteen. And yet I dread it too, because when the ordinary surrounds me, what happened here might feel like a distant nightmare, and I must never let myself dismiss it as such. The lessons of this damned hulk are hard-won and written in blood. I must remember them always. I glance at my surviving companions. Lere has fallen asleep or unconscious from exhaustion and pain, her head resting on Atticus's good shoulder. The Nakus himself manages to stay awake, humming a tuneless marching song under his breath. Whether to comfort Lere or himself, I'm not sure. Severina is awake, eyes closed, fingers worrying at her Aquila talisman. I suspect she's reciting the litany of resilience for the hunt's time, trying to drown out the whispers that must still plague her from her possession. Dimolo has plugged himself into the pod's console, likely cataloging damage, or perhaps just avoiding emotional entanglement by focusing on technical tasks. I realize I love these people. That's dangerous for an Inquisitor. We often must sacrifice those we care about. But Throne, help me. I love them for what they've endured, and who they've remained through it. I hope I've earned their love, or at least their respect in turn. Despite the hell I led them into, they will all need care. Lyra's injuries will heal, but her brush with the tome's siren call might leave deeper marks. I saw her face when she first gazed on it, rapt desire. She's inquisitive by nature, one reason I took her on, and such curiosity can be a double-edged sword. I'll have to guide her more gently, keep her on the right path. Or if I suspect she's straying, Emperor, give me strength to do what must be done. Atticus will probably ask for nothing more than a week leave and a stiff drink, but I'll see he gets a promotion or honor in whatever quiet way possible. He saved us all several times over and never flinched. He joked earlier in the mission that he'd retire after this. Maybe I'll encourage that Emperor knows he's earned rest. Yet a selfish part of me is relieved he lived. Good, steady fighters with unshakable faith like him are rare gems. Severina. I worry most for her. She touched the warp so directly when the demon overtook her. She'll blame herself. I know it. Sakers always do.
as if being born with the curse of sorcery is their fault. I'll write a glowing commendation for her file that her warning and resilience saved countless lives, and request she spend time at a tranquil convent of the sisterhood, or with the Scholastica Sicana for recovery. She needs peace, and the solace of the Emperor to heal her mind, and Dimmel as ever will bury himself in data and tech ritual to process what he saw. He'll write a secret paper about the temporal distortion phenomena on Mortis Tula that will likely be locked away unread. But I sense even he, the cold tech priest, has been moved somewhat. When I thanked him earlier as we boarded the pod, he responded not with binary K, but by lightly patting my shoulder with a mechadendrite. A small gesture, but from him it spoke volumes. I think he's realized in however limited Mechanicus fashion that logic alone doesn't explain or endure everything. Sometimes sheer human courage fills the gap. And what of me? I endured. Perhaps that is victory enough. As I mused in my nightmare of the chapel, I faced down an ancient demon of change and an inquisitor seduced by damnation. And I'm still here as myself. Or mostly myself. I won't lie in this private recording. I feel the tug, still the seductive whisper of what if. What if I peered just a little more into that book to glean one more scrap of knowledge? What harm if I don't use it corruptly? But I recall Forge's manic grin and Hale's shattered sanity, and I know that even considering it is a step towards the abyss. Knowledge is never just knowledge with chaos. It's bait on a hook. So I'll be turning the thrice-bound book over to the Conclave vaults at the first opportunity. It will be sealed away, perhaps more securely than before, perhaps with an edict that if it shows any activity, it gets jettisoned into a star. Let someone centuries from now decide further if humanity even survives that long. It's not for me to use. I accept that. I realize something as I articulate all this. I've grown. The me who first boarded this hulk was sure of everything of black and white, of pure zeal and duty. I still hold those values. Emperor knows, but I've seen how frail the line is between righteousness and hubris. I've felt doubt, terror, even empathy for a damned soul. These are changes in me, and they are not weakness. They are human. They are lessons. In our fight, Forge taunted that I was like him. He was wrong, but not entirely. Under different pressures, maybe I could have broken as he did. I think the Emperor forend that thought because it keeps me humble, and a humble inquisitor is perhaps less likely to fall. We're not meant to admit weakness or uncertainty in my line of work, certainly not publicly, but here into this recorder I confess it freely. I was afraid, I doubted, I nearly broke, and yet through the Emperor's grace or sheer stubborn will I did not. Courage isn't never feeling fear, it's feeling it, and choosing to act anyway. Perhaps in that regard I passed Cinch's test after all by not giving in to despair or temptation, by holding to who I am no matter how the world tried to rewrite me. I glanced down at my hands still covered in dried blood, Forge's blood. The demon's eye core my own from minor cuts. My fingers tremble a bit, now that the adrenaline is gone. I clasp them together to steal them. They'll obey me again soon enough. We should reach the Vigilance shortly. The Navy has already transmitted a respectful welcome, and medical teams stand by for our arrival. I'll have to hit the ground running, giving official accounts and locking down curious questions. The existence of this book of Forge's Fall. These are sensitive secrets that will likely be known only to the Inquisition and a few others. The wider Imperium will never know how close an enemy came to grasping a key to destiny itself. Perhaps ignorance truly is a blessing for the billions of everyday citizens. I will carry this burden of knowledge so they don't have to. That's part of our calling, isn't it? To be the bearer of awful truths so that others can live in the light of simple faith. Emperor, grant me strength to bear it well. The recorder light blinks, indicating memory nearly full.
Fitting this tale demands many words. I'll conclude here. If anyone ever hears this, if by some chance this account is ever retrieved or reviewed beyond my eyes, let it stand as a testament and a warning. How Sinch corrupts inquisitors is not always through blatant possession or obvious heresy. Sometimes it's through the little lies. The voice of your own reason telling you just one compromise is acceptable, just one step over the line for the greater good. It's the erosion of certainty grain by grain, replaced by overconfidence and secret pride. It's the feeling of isolation, like you're the only one who sees the truth and all others are blind. I felt those pressures out there in the dark. I see how one could break under them, justify anything under the banner of necessity. But I also see now that our strength, ironically, lies in our weakness, our reliance on faith, on each other. I stood firm because I had loyal friends to pull me back when I wavered, and an emperor to guide my soul when it quaked. Forge fell because he placed all trust in himself alone. In the end, he had nothing greater to anchor him when the warp winds came. I lay my head back against the bulkhead as the Vigilance docking tractor draws our pod in. My eyelids are heavy. I allow myself to close them for just a moment. I feel the faint vibration as we connect to the rescue ship's bay. Voices outside, human voices, sane and normal, filter through the hull. The hatch will open soon and light will pour in, and this nightmare voyage will truly end. Before it does, I murmur a final thought into this recorder. Perhaps to myself, perhaps to whoever might hear. I emerged from the shadows of that hulk, changed, scarred, yes, humbled, yes, but not corrupted. I remain who I chose to be. In this at least, I win. The Emperor protects. The hatch opens with a hiss, bright light flooding our small compartment. I end the recording with a click. Whatever awaits outside, medics, interrogators, inquisitorial overseers, I feel ready. I am weary to my bones, but a spark inside me glows fiercely, the unbroken flame of my human will. Neither warp horrors nor the schemes of a chaos god could snuff it out completely. That will carry me through the trials to come, as it carried me through Mortis Thula. Perhaps in the end, that is victory enough for